There is a side of walking with the Lord, walking this in this world as a believer of Christ that is unappealing, not just to the world, but to other believers. And so people don't always talk about it, right? Or they don't always mention it. And so when other people experience this, they're not used to people talking about it. You may can find something, and read about it, right? Has written a book or something like that. But those around them or the people they frequent up until that moment, they don't talk about it. And so the enemy will have you wondering, what is going on? What is this? Um, and while you're wondering, he's telling you what is going, like God is forsaking you. You've done something that you can't move forward, or the reason that you're here is because you're being punished, or whatever the case may be. And prior to that, right, you have to understand that you are favored by God. You have to understand that you are unconditionally loved by the Lord. If you don't know that, it will be harder, right? Look at, we like to talk about David as king. We like to talk about David when he was anointed above his brothers. We like to talk about uh, David. Some even like to talk about, the incident with Bathsheba, the sin against Uriah and Bathsheba, right? But some people like to talk about why David was the way that he was with, um, you know, his proclivities. Felt like Noel Jones at the anyway, but let's look at this. And I'm not talking about David per se, okay? I'm gonna move forward. But David was sent from his father's house to feed or give his brothers lunch. David didn't provide the lunch. Their father did. David just took the lunch to them in carrying out his father's wishes. David encountered a giant. He began to speak, those prophetic words that he was famous for, or he had become famous for, sorry. And so even when he went to take them, he was sent by his father to take them what the father had provided to his sons, food, nourishment. The brothers who he was sent to, rejected him. They spoke against I guess they wanted him to just, hey, give us the food and go home. Right? But they was mindful that, he had been anointed and stuff. So, that he was a sign. So the sight of him bothered them. I'm presupposing. Right? But something happened. Of course, he killed Saul's giant, the giant that Saul did not kill. Saul was made king to do great exploits by the power of God, the direction of God. But he did not want to take instructions from the Lord. He did not want to be sent by God. He didn't want to do God's bidding. So the Lord allowed him to remain king. Yet he was not communicating with him anymore. And so a giant was left in the land, mocking the people of God. David dealt with that giant. And then the next thing you know, he was being removed, not against his will, but removed from his father's house. He was being taken, not against his will, into another house that he would then be, he would do great exploits in that house. He would fight in Saul's army. He would defeat God's enemies, Israel's enemies. And then he would be hunted first in the house that he was taken into, and then outside of that, right? Okay. Then we have Joseph. Joseph, favored, loved by his father. He was sent by his father to check on his brothers. Regardless, his brothers, and people have all kinds of opinions about it, don't care with your Western mind, okay? But he sent his son to check on his brothers to see if they were about their father's business. He had a right to send his son or to send anybody to check on his sons. Now, if he did that, it's probably because his sons weren't always tending to his business because, they resented their father. He did not love them the way that they wanted to be, okay? Because he was in love with Joseph's mother. Anywho, which was their stepmom. I don't know what it was called in that time. But anywho, he was sent. Joseph was. He did what his father wanted. He went to check on his brothers. They say, here comes that dreamer. So now they still hot about, their interpretation of what Joseph, the dream he shared with them. And Joseph was sent by his father, but then snatched, taken, sold, but he was taken from Jacob, from his father's house, against his will. Y'all know the rest of the story. If you don't, go look at it. Okay? He did things where he was sent. It caused him to become, his God caused him to become noticed, even though he was a slave. Noticed. All right? Okay. And then he set him over everything. That happened after a lot of process, after a lot of accusations, after withstanding, enduring, outlasting, and still having an expectation. And so that happened also with David. David being a type of Christ. Joseph being a type of Christ. David was set as king. He was anointed as a boy. He was a king. As a man, he stepped into that position. So did Joseph, stepping into the reality of the dream they hated him for, or hated him all the more for. Okay. All right. And then we have Jesus sent by his father to, specifically, to a people. He did things among the people. His father's will. I came to do my father's will. David was going to do his father's will. He was sent. Joseph was sent to do his father's will. Jesus came to do his father's will. And there are those who received him, but there are those who did not. So Jesus was not taken per se from his father. He was sent from his father. He did his father's will, And then he was taken from the earth. Now he says, I lay my life down. No man take my life. I lay it down, right? Just to be clear. But looking at it, this is what it looked like, right? They did with him what they wanted to do. Had they known, they would have not crucified the Lord of glory. Anywho, sometimes, but God has highly exalted him above all. Y'all see it? Okay. Sometimes you've heard the story, the account for these are documentations. You've heard the account, but have not considered. Jesus said, whatsoever they did unto me, they would do to you. This is what he said to his disciples, his first apostles. Christ in you, right, is the hope of glory. Yes? So there will be times that you are sent. I'm not talking about you sent to preach. And I ain't talking about that. Ain't talking about that. You literally was sent to this world, yes, but I'm not going to get. You will be sent to a people, to be among a people. And Christ in you will do what he does. He will do through you his Father's will. Yes? God works in us to will and to do of his good pleasure. He sends you. And then you are taken, either you're favored, like taken in, like David was. It wasn't a fond affection. Saul just realized he needed David because, he himself was scared. Or taken like Joseph was, right? And you find yourself as a slave, going from favored by your father to seemingly a slave, okay? And not, they treat me like a slave. They always got me doing this and that. No, I'm not talking about that, okay? I don't want to be specific because you can find yourself. Just find yourself. However however that looks to you, okay? But you're still favored by your father. You still was sent among those people by him. There will be a time where they may embrace you, speak well of you, right? Give you set you in certain places to do certain things. That's what Saul sent David. David was trained and he sent him, to fight wars for him, battles for him. And God caused him to increase. And the Lord will cause you to increase. The Lord will cause you to be noticed. The problem is when you're noticed by some who are not receiving, but looking at who's receiving you. You then encounter the other extreme where you're hated without a cause. You're hated without a cause. What do you do? How do you bear up under that? How do you outlast it? I remember being in a place where I was received. First, it's usually the leader, it depends on what your assignment is, okay? Or depend on what the Lord is doing, the work he's doing. But while I was received by the leader, those that I was among who wanted the favor of the leader, let's say that, or who just did not want the leader to favor me, They were bothered by me. They resisted everything the leader put me to do, gave me to do. Every time the leader would give me something to do, I would do what I was given. And they would go to complaint. The more other people liked it, these people would go to complaint. And because the leader wasn't as strong in standing in what God said, I would be moved from there, given something else or something. You got what I'm saying? Okay. That's a whole nother, I could even tell you, like, I could look at it now and know what the Lord was not just doing in me, but what he was doing and trying to show the leader. But anyway, it was too much. It was too much. Yeah. So Jesus encountered this with the Pharisees, the scribes, the Sadducees, the Jews themselves, but even the Romans. Right? You gotta look at it like, anywho. So the Christ in you, Christ is being formed in you, and as he's formed in you, he is seen, and he is the one that was sent by the Father into this world. And you become a sign to some that you are sent among. And some watch you from afar. You know, there are those that watched from afar, did not come close, right? With David, nor with Joseph or Jesus. All right, they watch from afar. There are those who could teach from afar, but there are those that watch from afar, did not participate, but they saw. And they're watching what happens. How, they just watch you because the Lord wants you to be a sign to them sometimes, right? There came a time where Joseph, of course, we know he became second in command in Egypt. But he made a statement at one point. He said, the Lord, when he had his second son, I think, it was at the birth of his first or second son, and he named him, and then he said, for the Lord has caused me to forget my pain. Like a woman giving birth to a child. There's pain in the birthing. There's pain when the water breaks and the child, there's no cushion there. You begin to feel, you begin to feel, and muscles, contracting, and yes, and that baby like, okay, we coming through here. I gotta get out here. This ain't comfortable for me to stay in here anymore. After the child is born, immediately the pain is forgotten. The pain is excruciating. And sometimes pain is because you're thinking about it, right? It's unbearable. But as soon as the baby is out, you see the baby's healthy, everything is well, you forget your pain. So some people may be there in one of those spaces, or like one of those spaces. You may find yourself like one of those spaces that I named. But there's coming a time where God will cause you to forget your pain. The Lord will grace you to forgive the process. Stay in expectation of God, even when people disappoint.